Welcome to Music Theory Logic. Andrew here, and today I have a pretty simple concept for you, but the best way to guarantee that you're going to make better profit margins on the music or whatever it is you're making or selling out there is to decrease your cost. So profit, again, should be obvious, but it's basically your total revenue, the total amount of money that comes in from the sale of your product in the whole business. Your profit is that total revenue minus the cost, the amount of money that you had to spend to generate said revenue, and the difference is called profit. Now, for anyone who's in a business world or an entrepreneur or looking at their music career as a business, this will be super obvious to you. I've made videos in the past where I've talked about the concept that it's really important for us musicians to realize when we are trying to enter into the industry of making a living, performing, writing, recording, doing anything in music, that despite what brought us in and the fact that we love music, it is an incredible art form. It is very close to my heart, but when we are doing this for money, it is a business. And I was guilty of this in the beginning, in my early days of like making albums or recordings in the context of being in a band. I sort of knew it was a business, but I didn't really like approach or make decisions based on things like that. I really sort of like let my creative heart and sort of vision drive me, and I think it's important to still do that, but it's really also important to recognize that it's a business. It's going to cost money to make recordings. It's going to cost money to get from point A to point B to play a show. The show is going to generate money if people are paying at the door, depending upon your agreement with the club. Anyway, all these different things are really important. I think different genres of music, people are perhaps better or worse at this. I think the modern like DJ world of musicians, you have a lot of DJs who sort of start as nightlife promoters and get into DJing and then perhaps get into producing or working with a producer like yours truly to generate original music. And that kind of person is going to be a lot better or more likely to view this all as a business. And the musicians who are much less likely to view this stuff as a business, in my own experience, are going to be the bands and the more classical or the older versions of musicians, people that write songs, play guitar, sing those songs, play with other people, have an ensemble, do like live jazz, whatever, that world of music. So the best way for musicians, now that we're looking at it as a business, our product is our music, and in addition to merchandise and our performance and stuff like that. But if we look at the music as our product, again, the way I can tell you to guarantee the profit per sale on that music is to spend less money on it. Now, as a side note, I am not advocating for not investing in your recordings. You get what you pay for. Things will sound better if they're recorded in better studios, if they're mixed by professionals, if they're mastered by quality mastering engineers in incredibly tuned rooms with great gear. But that stuff gets really expensive really quickly. For instance, you could easily spend $100 an hour in a studio. Spending 10 hours working on like 3 or 4 songs as a band would even be efficient, right? So that's $1,000. Mixing can run you anywhere from like $100 a song for somebody who's hungry getting their career going in your local city, upwards of 1,000, and even I've heard estimates of like 5,000 and 7,000 for the industry like A-list mixing engineers. And mastering, ballpark $100 to $500. So it's really easy for these expenses to really stack up. And another interesting thing about making a recording is if you don't do your research ahead of time, and let's say like you go in and spend the $1,000 at the studio, now you're already invested in the project, right? So you're going to feel more inclined to spend more money to get the project to the finish line. And so I'm here to tell you on that topic, it's important to understand before you begin a recording project what the different costs are. And the real theme of my video is that it is easier and more cost-effective, cheaper to get the basic equipment that you need to do some recording. Now, if you're in a band and you have live drums, those are going to be the hardest thing for you to like get microphones. Getting a whole kit of microphones is expensive. If you're recording more than 2 channels at once, you're going to need a nicer interface. So drums can be really difficult. But I think the first step for like every musician out there, whether you're playing piano, guitar, you're in a band, I think it's really important that either you, if you're a solo act, or you're somebody in your group, if you're a band, starts to embrace this technology. So for like $200, I think between 150 and 250, depending upon promotions and stuff, you can get a Focusrite 2 Ti. It's an interface that will allow you to plug into powered monitors that you can like make louder and hear your music better. Using headphones is a really, really preferable route, just because chances are like the sound of speakers is dependent upon the treatment of your room. And unless you're in a really good room, headphones are going to be more consistent. But the interface, again, like $200. Microphones anywhere from like $200 to $800, right? So let's say, well, we could go way more expensive in microphones, but I think in terms of really quality stuff that is enough for your first microphone, between $200 and $800 is totally there. People will go like with a blue microphone on their lower end stuff and the more 200 route. This Shure SM7B is a really good option. The microphone itself is going to run you like $500, $550. Then you're going to need a preamp that's going to boost the level of this, like a cloud lifter. So this can be like $600. Another mic that I have that is a absolute workhorse and was the first vocal mic I had was a Mojave MA200. Shout out to Mark Suhonen out of San Diego who told me about that microphone. But so anyway, back to our cost analysis. We spent $200 on the interface. Say we spent $600 on the mic. We're into it for $800. Next step is a digital audio workstation. If you're on a PC, you could go the route of like, I think Cubase is on PC, but a lot of people use Fruity Loops, FL Studio. You can use free DAWs like Reaper or Audacity. If you're on Apple products, you could use GarageBand, or you could spend $180, get Logic Pro, subscribe to this channel, and learn about all sorts of stuff with Logic Pro. It is the only DAW that you really need. You could even go the Pro Tools route if perhaps you had exposure to Pro Tools in the past, or you know that you are in the band world and you know the studio you're going to go to and you want to keep things consistent. You could go Pro Tools. If you're really into dance music, it could be Ableton. Now, let's just say it's Logic. That's $200. So 200, 600, we have $1,000 in total. So that same fee that would be 10 hours in a great studio, you now have everything you need to record. Let's say we're in a band, record guitar and bass direct. You definitely have the ability. That means plugging directly into your interface. You can record a vocal via your microphone. You can record backing vocals, the same single microphone that you have, doing overdubbing. And so you can get really far. Now, if you are in a situation where you need live drums, you can save a ton of money by doing everything that you can do on your own, like I just mentioned, and then going into a studio and recording drums. So again, the lower amount of money that you spend per project is really really helpful. If you spend $1,000 and you have your setup to record, not only could you make one project cheaper, but the more projects that you do, your cost per project is going to go down. I think this is going to not even be helpful, or this isn't news to those of you if you're like dance music producer, DJs, or if you're hip hop producers, or if you're lyricists. Like lots of people are familiar with this. I think the area of musicians that really need to hear this are the band world, and a lot of people are waking up to this. Once again, 20 years ago, it would have been a lot more cost prohibitive or expensive to be up and running to be able to record your stuff. Every year that technology becomes more accessible, computers get more powerful, the peripherals or the other gear that we have becomes more up to speed with the digital like recall, and there's like, the world is getting so that like you can buy like Chinese made audio gear for like really cheap, or you can go with smaller companies where you're getting stuff directly from them. But the whole idea is that it's not going to get, it's not going to go the opposite direction. It's not going to all of a sudden get more expensive to record. So I highly recommend that you invest in the kind of setups as opposed to getting in a situation where you have to pay other people to get your music out. Now, on a side note, I said this in the beginning, but you do get what you pay for. If you are going into a great studio and a great engineer is recording you on great microphones with great outboard gear, and you have somebody who's mixed many projects, mixed the album, and you again get it mastered, like it will sound a lot better. Now, if you have excess resources, and that's not a problem at all, say you are a finance person, you made a ton of money on cryptocurrency, or your band has some residency, it's generating tons of money, and you just don't want to work on stuff yourself, that is fine, and you can you definitely can get a better sounding recording from investing in it. I just want to warn those of you that perhaps would invest a ton of money in creating a song. You don't have the gear, you just paid the studio and the mixing engineers and all of that. And now you're in a situation where that song has to generate money, or you have to get more money from somewhere else. And as musicians, we really want to become sustainable, or being able to put out music throughout time. As an independent artist or somebody who's newer to the world of releasing music, it's you chances are don't have a following, even if you are some sort of influencer or TikTok star, and that's not focused on your music. It's still going to be a difficult thing in the beginning to promote your music and get listeners. And so I just urge all of my clients or friends or people I talk to not spend all the resources you have on one recording, and better invest in being up to speed to sort of help or do work on your own music. And then finally, I will say that as your career develops, your following gets bigger, you're getting paid more for shows, you're busier, it then becomes a lot less of a problem to spend money on said recordings. It makes sense to have recordings that are the best possible thing that you can make, because you have a place where people are going to consume them, like a following. So your goal in the end should be to generate more money on your recordings and your brand or your music project, so much so that you can hire people to do the work, because again, you get what you pay for. Things are going to be better. But ultimately, when you get to that point, if you were recording some of your band's stuff on your own, you were trying to mix it, or the more involved in the process you become and the more you understand the technology, the better you are at sort of guiding your whole team, or figuring out what studio you want to record with, or asking the right questions of the engineer who's recording you, or figuring out the right person to mix it, or doing things on your own that lower the cost of the person mixing it. So I haven't even mentioned the editing. So you can really save yourself a ton of money if you are recording in a great studio. You get the stems and you bring it home. If you understand Logic and editing and overdubbing, or perhaps adding some virtual instruments, the more that you can get your project closer to done, the less it's going to cost, or the less time someone else is going to have to spend doing those things. So hopefully this wasn't totally revolutionary for you, but those of you out there that play guitar or bass or sing and are in groups or doing your own thing, please follow, subscribe to this channel or other channels like it, where you can learn to do a lot of this stuff on your own, and you will become a much more self-sustaining project that you will be able to put out more music throughout time and give yourself a better chance of growing that reach or that following and all of those things. If you found this helpful, you'd help me out a lot by subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions for this, let me know. If you have any things you think I didn't mention or we should hear about, let me know in the comments. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.